There are multiple laws that protect individuals with disabilities, a population of nearly 50 million in the United States. As an employer or manager, it's inevitable at some point in your career you will need to make special accommodations or even provide a leave of absence for a disability. Developing reasonable accommodations and managing disabilities under the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, is one of the most important legal and practical challenges facing employers today. Welcome to CSO's ADA Compliance Training Program. As an employer, it is your responsibility to understand the Americans with Disabilities Act when it applies to your company, and the unique situations covered by ADA. In this program, you will learn who is eligible for ADA and the related benefits and limits. You will also have a chance to review common ADA situations and test your knowledge on how to handle these cases. Finally, you will receive practical tips to prevent common ADA violations and minimize your liability. Pay attention, there's a test. No kidding. The Americans with Disabilities Act prohibits discrimination against employees with a disability. This includes discrimination in hiring, firing, promotions, pay, and benefits. The ADA applies to companies with 15 or more employees and all state and local government employers, regardless of the number of employees. The ADA prohibits discrimination against any qualified individual with a disability and requires employers to provide reasonable accommodation to qualified disabled applicants and employees. As an employer, you are required to provide a reasonable accommodation if the disability requires this in order to apply for a job, perform a job, or enjoy benefits offered by the company. One reasonable accommodation may include making your existing facilities readily accessible to people with disabilities. An accommodation could also include restructuring a job, modifying work schedules, and reassigning an employee with a disability to a vacant position. It may also require you to buy or modify equipment for the person to perform the job. You may need to modify exams, training materials, or policies to meet a qualified individual's needs. You may also need to provide readers or interpreters as a form of reasonable accommodation. Now that we've reviewed the basics of the ADA, let's take a look at some more complicated scenarios and see if you can identify where the ADA applies. Cindy, an executive secretary for a large company, was recently diagnosed with cancer. Cindy is very competent, with more than 15 years' experience working for Fortune 500 companies. Due to her cancer diagnosis, Cindy now needs to periodically leave the office for her chemo and radiation treatments. As an employer, are you required to give time off for her treatments? If you said yes, you are correct. Because Cindy can perform the essential functions of her job with reasonable accommodation, the time off for appointments, you are required to provide this accommodation under the ADA. Oftentimes, identifying a disability can be confusing, so it is always best to consult with your legal counsel if you have any questions as to whether or not an employee is eligible for ADA. Let's try another one. Pam, an advertising account executive, recently took 12 weeks of FMLA leave to care for her newborn child. After a cesarean section birth, Pam is experiencing a difficult recovery that has led to a back injury, making it difficult to walk, stand, sit, and even sleep at times. Unfortunately, Pam's FMLA leave has expired, and she is requesting additional time off. Does Pam's company have to give her additional leave? If you answered yes, you are correct. Due to her back injury, Pam may be considered disabled, and under the ADA, the employer may be required to give her additional time off as a reasonable accommodation to her disability.